The story of America's psychic spies begins not with revelation, but with torture. It begins with the CIA's desperate and shameful descent into Project MKUltra, launched in 1953. It wasn't just research. It was an alchemical search for the ultimate weapon: total involuntary control over the human mind. The CIA was hunting for a Manchurian candidate, an operative so broken that they could be commanded to perform complex acts, even assassination, without memory or resistance. Preceded by the brutal Project Artichoke in 1951, their mandate was clear: discover the keys to absolute behavioral modification. Their methodologies seemed ripped straight from nightmares. MKUltra funded over 130 research programs across universities, hospitals, and prisons, often using unwitting Americans as the test subjects. Agents would administer massive doses of psychoactive agents, chiefly LSD, along with repeated electroshocks, sensory deprivation, and relentless hypnosis. Their goal was to produce amnesia to render the induction of hypnosis easier and identify chemicals that would promote illogical thinking. They sought to dismantle the conscious mind and reassemble a controllable asset, a superbeing, engineered through trauma. But their alchemy failed, at least according to the official record. The coercive methods, the torture, the drugs, the chaos seemed to only produce damage, not reliable intelligence. The CIA had proved that brute force could destroy the mind, but not unlock its true occult power. The destruction of most MKUltra files in 1973 was not an end. It was an ultimate cover-up of an allegedly failed dark ritual. The CIA understood the lesson. Reliable superintelligence could not be forced through chemical ruin. It had to be cultivated. At least, this is what the public record shows. The pursuit of the ultimate cognitive asset immediately shifted, and the door slammed shut on MKUltra. Or it went underground. A new era of refinement began under the cryptonym SCANATE, Scan by Coordinate, funded by the CIA in the early 1970s. This initiated the era of formalized parapsychology research at the Stanford Research Institute, SRI. This pivot was necessitated by Cold War fear. U.S. intelligence reports had detailed the massive and terrifying investment that the Soviet Union put into psychotronics. The Army was specifically warned that the Soviets were making significant progress toward developing psychotronic weapons, the power to sabotage weapon systems or use concentrated psychic energy as a death beam, and were curating the creation of psychic killers and spies. America had to create its own super beings in response. The new protocols were an admission of MKUltra's methodological failure. The new formalized protocols for remote viewing, RV, explicitly banned the crude tools of the past. No drugs or hypnosis will be used in this RV protocol. This was the sanitized story given to the public moving forward. The focus was no longer on chaotic coercion, but on isolating the elusive channel of anomalous cognition through a rigorous, structured scientific control. The military application phase began in 1978 under Project GRILL FLAME. This was the Army's attempt to take the proven reality of psychic power and integrate it into the battlefield. The mission was not vague. The Army Material Systems Analysis Activity, AMSAA, demanded that psychic reports be held to the same standard as satellite surveillance, capable of delivering real-time and comprehensive battlefield damage surveys and target acquisition. The psychic assets were being groomed to operate as a revolutionary, untraceable surveillance system. According to the declassified documents, they confirmed two categories of power that were sought to be weaponized. One was remote viewing, the intelligence gathering application where assets were trained to see the contents of enemy safes or distant military sites. The second was psychokinesis, the ultimate physical power. Research was specifically conducted on psychokinesis, the mental ability to influence physical systems, with the goal of developing a purely thought-activated switch for weapon systems. They studied the mental perturbation of electronic components, microchips, and even the decay rate of radioactive material. This admission, although sanitized for our public viewing, confirms that the US government was actively researching the creation of true superbeings, individuals capable of observation across space and time, with influence over the physical world itself. After the supposed failure of MKUltra, the rigorous testing by SRI proved that the core power was real. Statistically significant laboratory results had been demonstrated. Once this power had been proven, once the assets delivered actionable, successful results too sensitive to document, a conspiracy moved to seize control and usher these projects into private black boxes, no longer subject to any kind of oversight. The first move came in 1980 when the Army General Council used a bureaucratic decree to reclassify psychoenergetics as experimentation on human subjects. This classification immediately required approval from the Secretary of the Army, placing the program under a chokehold of political oversight. The financial killshot followed. In the fiscal year 83 DoD budget review, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence curtailed all Army psychoenergetic activities funded under the Core National Foreign Intelligence Program, NFIP. They demanded the work be terminated or pushed outside of the NFIP. This was not program termination, it was an order to drive these secret programs private and into the shadows. But the generals remained defiant. The commanding general of INSCOM, Army Intelligence, refused to let this program die. He initiated a radical and illegal move. The unit was transitioned into a new compartmentalized special access program, nicknamed Project Center Lane, in 1982. The renaming of these special access programs and the drive to have these programs moved private are two very familiar tactics that you will constantly encounter when researching these black projects. Crucially, Center Lane was funded by utilizing non-auditable security and investigative activities monies. This is the blackest of budgets, used to finance the psychic war machine outside of the view of Congress. They were explicitly breaking the law to maintain a strategic asset too powerful to be governed by the rule of law. Though, once again, a transfer was finalized to ensure the institutional continuity of these super assets. By 1985, the Center Lane unit, equipment, and highly trained personnel were transferred to the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, as a Department of Defense Special Access Program, establishing Project Sunstreak. The Army's initial program, GRILL FLAME, had now evolved into the DIA's long-term operational capability, along with other parallel efforts like SCANATE. These programs were eventually consolidated under the umbrella name of the Stargate Project. The goals of Sunstreak reveal the esoteric nature of the program's intent. Applications included the targeting of key enemy personnel from covert agents to key military commanders, and devising countermeasures against hostile remote viewing efforts. Furthermore, the DIA maintained a 5-year program explicitly focused on the research and development of psychoenergetics as a means of enhancing human performance for military applications. The goal was still the creation of a refined operational supersoldier, utilizing cognitive enhancement instead of chemical torture. But shadowy forces, the aforementioned conspiracy, were preparing an exit strategy, attempting to move any and all psychoenergetics programs out of the reach of FOIA requests. Internal DIA documents began to produce a careful narrative. They claimed that while remote viewing power was real, its reliability dropped to a very low data correlation of about 10% or less for critical political and military scenarios. The final act of suppression occurred in 1995. The CIA, finally taking over the program, commissioned the American Institute for Research, or AIR, to conduct an exhaustive evaluation of the cumulative work of GRILL FLAME, Center Lane, Sunstreak, and Stargate. Their report was the perfect deception, calculated to put the psychic secret permanently to rest. The reviewers were forced to admit that a statistically significant laboratory effect had been demonstrated. The documents prove, unequivocally, that the power is real. But their final conclusion negated this reality. The AIR report claimed that the information produced was vague and ambiguous, inconsistent and inaccurate, and failed to produce actionable intelligence. The $20 million program was declared worthless. The message was clear. The power is real, but we control the narrative and declare it useless. The entire history, from the chemical nightmares of MKUltra that sought to force a psychic operative, to the military defiance of Center Lane that proved the operational success, was ultimately buried under a single dismissive report. The goal of the global conspiracy wasn't simply to eliminate the knowledge of these programs, but to discredit the very idea of anomalous human potential, to ensure that the secrets of remote viewing, psychokinesis, and enhanced human potential remain exclusively within the deepest, darkest sectors of the intelligence community, and that there is ultimately nothing to see here. They did not stop the research. They simply made it disappear. Thank you for watching. Please like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this.